Good evening, candidates and the audience. I want to thank you for taking your civic duty seriously and coming out tonight to listen to our candidates. This is a great country, and voting for our representative leaders is one of the cornerstones of democracy. My name is Suzanne Dixon, and I'll be your moderator this evening. Our timekeeper is Deb Ellis. We're both members of the League of Women Voters of the Holland area. The League is a national, nonpartisan organization that promotes political responsibility through informed and active participation of citizens in government. The League does not support or oppose any political party or candidate. It will take a position on issues. It's a long history of organizing and running candidate forums. Our rules are consistent and fair. These rules were sent out to all the candidates as part of their contact information. Every effort has been made to accommodate candidates' schedules, but unfortunately, one candidate for the 89th District and one candidate from the 2nd District were unable to attend due to scheduling conflicts. As long as we have more than one candidate, our rules allow the forum to be held. They are invited to submit a 2-minute statement on their behalf. I will now begin by reading to you the candidate rules that were sent out. Number 1, there will be stand-ins for the candidates. Absentee candidates may have an opening statement read by either the moderator or someone he or she has chosen. This is a forum, not a debate. It's an opportunity for the candidates to articulate why each one is running for this office. The order of who speaks first, second, etc. will be determined alphabetically by last name, and it will rotate thereafter. Each candidate will have an opening statement of 2 minutes. After that, each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to answer questions, and then 2 minutes for a closing statement. Deb is sitting right here, and she will be your timer, and she has cards that she'll put up indicating when you're getting close to the end of the time and when you have to stop.
What, no air horn?
She's very clear. Okay. Time limits will be observed strictly, and the timekeeper will hold cards indicating remaining time, ending with the final time's up card. Audience questions may be directed to one or all of the candidates. Each candidate will be allowed to answer each question, even if the question was directed to a specific candidate. Questions may not be personal or inflammatory. The moderator reserves the right to disallow any question if deemed unacceptable. In addition, the moderator may ask for clarification or simplification. The moderator also reserves the right to interrupt the candidate if the responses are personal attacks or if the responses stray from the subject. Questions are to be verbal. The moderator will call on audience members. A microphone will be available. We have a couple of runners in the room. This woman in the red jacket, she'll be happy to bring the mic over to you so you can give a question. But if you would like to, you may also write a question, and so Nikki has some cards there. If you prefer not to stand up and give it, you can get a card and submit it, and she'll bring it to me to ask. We ask the audience to refrain from demonstrating support or non-support of a candidate. No campaign signs or apparel are allowed inside the forum room. A table for the campaign materials is provided outside the room. No cameras or taping equipment is permitted other than that authorized by the League of Women Voters. As a courtesy to everyone, please turn off all your cell phones and other electronic devices during this forum. And finally, candidates are invited to remain at the site to meet the public and the press at the end of the program. We'll begin with the 89th District, and then halfway through we'll switch over to the 2nd Congressional District, so there'll probably be a slight pause between the two. And then I will begin by reading a statement sent in by Representative candidate Jim Lilly, who's unable to attend tonight. So Jim's statement is, I am sorry I'm not able to join the other candidates tonight to participate in this evening's League of Women Voters Forum. That said, I'm happy to report that I'll be participating in my 2nd League Forum of this election cycle next Tuesday at the Spring Lake District Library, and that's October 11th. For anyone who's interested, the forum begins at 6:30 at 123 East Exchange Street in Spring Lake. The League of Women Voters has also asked the candidates to post responses to some issue-related questions online at vote411.org. So the league has a website, it's a national site, vote411.org, and these candidates have put in responses. I believe there were 4 questions in different areas, and so you can get a feel for what their feeling is on various policy issues. Since the league was kind enough to allow me to make this statement in my absence, I'd like to mention that my campaign is the only one to be endorsed by the Michigan Chamber of Commerce, Michigan Manufacturers Association, the Michigan Farm Bureau's Agri-PAC Committee, and the Grand Rapids Chamber of Commerce Political Action Committee, the West Michigan Lakeshore Association of Realtors, the Associate Builders and Contractors of Michigan PAC, and the Police Officers Association of Michigan, just to name a few. Because of my experience and relationships with our community leaders, I've also far more endorsements from our region's local and county elected officials than any other candidate in the race for this position. To learn more about my campaign, I invite you to visit my website at votejimlilly.com. Thank you. So we'll go ahead and begin. The opening statements, you will have 2 minutes, and then closing statements are 2 minutes, and each question will be a minute and a half. So we'll begin this evening with candidate Mary Buzema.
That's fine. Close enough.
Okay.
Bazuma.
Oh, Buzuma,
That's
sorry.
right.
You can please go ahead and get an opening statement.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for inviting me and for all of you coming out to this forum. My name is Mary Buzuma. I was born in Grand Haven and I attended Grand Haven High School. I graduated from Kalamazoo College with a BA in political science. I joined the Navy and spent 26 years as an intelligence specialist. I spent 10 tours on both land and sea. When I retired as a senior chief petty officer, which if you're not familiar with the Navy, it's an E8. I was living in Virginia for a while and then I ended up moving back. I joined the Libertarian Party in Michigan. I was its state chair for 2 years. I also was the Libertarian candidate for U.S. Congress, 2nd District in 2012, and I was also the Libertarian candidate for governor in 2014. Bet you didn't know that, did you? Sorry, I didn't spend a lot of time down here, but the reason that I'm running is because I want to give voters a choice. Because sometimes it's more than a choice of A or B, Republican, Democrat. There's C, D, E, or F. And that's why I'm running. I'm a libertarian because I believe in liberty. And not enough candidates, especially in this election, are talking about liberty. So I'm here to maybe persuade you a little bit and would like your vote on November 8th. Thank you.
Thanks, of course, to the Holland League of Women Voters, and I am looking forward to next week with the Grand Haven Area League having their event at the Spring Lake Library, and at that time, courtesy of our Republican candidate to appear at that one too. Thanks to Mary for being here tonight, and I did find out yesterday that you ran for governor. That was from one of our staffers who pays attention to things. I'm running to be the next state representative. I want to represent all the voters of this district, groups that are within this district, our elected officials, some of which have endorsed the Republican candidate, some have not. But I want to represent all of us in Lansing. And I want to go there, and I want to make things work in our capital for all of us. As we go through tonight, I'd like to demonstrate experiences I have from my 30 years of operating and owning a business, my community involvement in our schools, and other things, and also the experience I've had working already with our local elected officials and getting actual things done here in Ottawa County. I've accomplished that as a Democrat, working with elected Republican officials. And I think that's an ability that we could really use in Lansing. So if I'm elected, I'll need to work my butt off the next 2 years to demonstrate all that and earn my reelection. If our Republican opponent wins this, his reelection will already be paid for.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the floor? Okay, I will go ahead and start with some that the league members have prepared, and then I hope you'll be thinking of something and chime in soon. How would you, this first question will address to Mary Bazuma.
Okay.
Did I say it right?
Yeah, you did.
Okay, good. How would you work to bring more transparency into our state government?
Well, right now, there are 2 bills that are floating around in the legislature. The House has passed it. This is transparency both for the legislature and the governor. As far as transparency for myself or
State government.
state government, yeah. It was done before, about 4 years ago. It passed overwhelmingly. And the governor vetoed it. Now, why they didn't override the veto, I have no idea. Maybe they felt that, okay, the governor's going to veto it, so we'll all look like we're doing something, and then we can all go home. Sounds like a movie. Too bad we don't have the film office anymore. But transparency is important because I believe in accountability, and that's a tenet of the Libertarian Party. Responsibility, accountability. You elect your representatives. They need to be accountable to you. They need to know what's going on. You need to know what's going on. And also, as far as transparency goes, the lobbyist rules are kind of, for lack of a better term, squeaky. You need to tighten those up. Because you need to know if they voted for something that you didn't think was right, you need to know maybe who was getting to them. Who were they talking to?
Thank you. Tim?
The Freedom of Information Act should apply to all branches of government, all of our elected offices, all those offices in Lansing. We're the people, we elect those folks. We should know what's going on, and we should be able to evaluate our elected officials as far as re-electing them to office. The other thing that happens is, we may get to redistricting later, but redistricting is a murky thing. And that happens every 10 years, and the party that's in office in each state across the country will draw district boundaries. This last time, it got really, really serious, so serious that there could have been a ballot proposal to overturn that. But the way Michigan law works, there's a little quirk, and if you put a funding provision in on that legislation, then it can't be subject to any sort of referendum where the citizens would overrule that. So that was stuck in on this. And it kind of it's a permanent power grab. That makes it such that after the 2020 elections, it's far more likely that the party in power will stay in power. And that's something where it's important, all of you being here tonight, that this is part of transparency. And we're all in this together. And if we vote for candidates that are for that, that will help us all out.
Okay, thank you. Second question. Mary, what are your views on term limits for our state legislatures?
You know, I'm not a big fan of them, only because there's very little institutional knowledge sometimes. I lived in Virginia for about 5 years before I came back to Michigan. And they didn't have term limits. But they did have a part-time legislature. And unfortunately, yes, there were some real emirs of incumbistan in that group. However, it wasn't really our founders' intent to have professional politicians. I think people should do some time and then voluntarily leave. However, it does make re-elections sometimes a little people are always going to vote for the incumbent, but the other people have got to step up and earn that vote also. So no, I would say no. I do not like term limits, but I do like a part-time legislature.
Okay, Tim?
This is great. Mary keeps going first. I get to
Yeah,
think
I know.
about what I'm
And
going to
sorry.
say.
Yeah,
I just noticed that I did that, and I'm gonna change it up to be fair, because that wasn't fair. Thanks for pointing it out.
So my term limits point of view comes from my own experience in my bicycle store. Because we opened that in 1985, and for the first 6 years, we didn't know what we were doing. Every year was, gosh, what's going to happen now? After 6 years, we figured out inventory, figured out how to hire people, figured out how to pay them properly, figured out how we should price things. And we started running an efficient, effective, growing business after 6 years. After about 24 years, my son Matt started knowing way more about the business and doing a better job of it than I did. So now running for office, I'm thinking, gosh, 6 years, and I've had this conversation with Amanda Price, our current representative. 6 years, you don't really know what you're doing. And it occurred to me out on doors the other day talking to a voter where I said, yeah, we've had Detroit schools under emergency management for 7 years. That's the entire time our current representative has been in office. There should be a term limit for emergency managers. So the Farm Bureau, their suggestion is to still have term limits. Ideally, we would just vote people out, but we don't do that. So they would make it, instead of 3 terms for a state representative, make it 6 terms, 12 years. Instead of 2 terms for 2 4-year terms for a state senator, add the 3rd term, so another 12 years. So it could be 24 years total if you get promoted, and that's the same time I should be in that bike store.
Well, Tim, here's your chance. The next question is, as the state passes more and more unfunded mandates for our educational system, what would you propose as ways to support these mandates?
Well, I mean, that's saying that the state should continue doing that, and that's how we should do things. It's a red flag to me that a lot of people that are our elected officials in Lansing, talk about how we need to have local control over things, but at the same time pass those mandates where there's an interesting story on the radio a couple weeks ago talking to school board members. There is very, very little for them to decide anymore. They're constrained on their budget. They have very little ability to do their own millage, to get more local money for their school district. There are so many things imposed on them, whether it's the MEA and things that are required for payment, things as far as contracting out food service, the maintenance things. There's very little of that. I guess I'm ignoring that question some, but I would be for restoring local control to our local school boards. I was at the West Ottawa School Board last month, attended that meeting, and that was good and informative, but yeah.
Okay, Mary, I'll repeat the question. As the state passes more and more mandates for our educational system, what would you propose as ways to support these mandates?
Well, if the state is going to mandate things, then the state has to pay for them. Unfortunately, that comes out of our taxes. Now, locally, yeah, we passed Proposition A, and that capped local funding. But I would be with Tim as far as more local control here. I mean, we have almost a federalist system now in Lansing, where all the money and all the power is in Lansing, and it comes back in little dribs and drabs. But no, if the state mandates, then they have to fund it. They can't squeak out of it like they normally do.
Okay. Mary, here's another one for you.
Okay.
How do you feel about the recently passed third grade reading mandate, and what are your plans to deal with the consequences of this mandate?
Well, I'm glad that at least the Senate put in an amendment for parental consultation. Because it really is, reading is parent, teacher, child. I don't think the state, I appreciate Amanda, she's an educator, she likes education. But like I said, the state shouldn't have to say, no social promotion. Like I said, it's a local thing. Parent, teacher, child. If they feel that they can go on, then they can go on. When I was living in Virginia, I did volunteer work for Tidewater Literacy. I was an adult literacy tutor. And I had to deal with a lot of people who just got socially promoted. And it's really heartbreaking to know that, you're dealing with an adult here that has never really learned to read. So I appreciate her work on the bill, but I'm glad that they did put in the parent clause.
Okay, Tim, third grade reading.
Yeah, of course, kids that are in the fourth grade should be able to read at a fourth grade level. Way, way, way too many can't. The legislation has a number of exemptions that may be better, maybe not. But my concern here is, talking about the mandates, we're legislating that kids read. We're not teaching kids to read. So, it doesn't cost money to legislate that, but it does cost money to have reading specialists, to start education earlier, to be working with kids in smaller class sizes so that kids can read. And then I wonder about, there's always unintended consequences in anything we do, when we make laws. There's always unintended consequences. And it occurs to me that, okay, you're going to hold the kids back to third grade, or we're going to have more third graders. Are we going to have more third grade teachers? No, so class size is going to go up. So the kids that just came up from second grade, now they're in bigger class size, so they're going to have trouble reading. We're going to have a bubble where we're going to have more people in school longer. So it's going to take more money to educate more students longer. They're not going to be graduating in that same year. Plus, this is the real kicker. Once they've been held back 1 year, that's it. Okay, so we just held them back, and now they're moving on, and they still don't read at that level.
Please, sir.
Since we're on education, every data I've seen says that there really isn't a significant difference between children's progress in charter schools versus public schools, with the exception of the fact that charter schools typically tend to have smaller classrooms, and that seems to be the determiner. What is your position on the charter school proliferation in the state?
Who's first?
I don't know.
I'll go first.
I do. So it would be Tim.
Okay.
Oh, wait, yes, Tim. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. There's one voter I talked to that was just firmly wanting to know how I felt about vouchers. And the term slippery slope can be overused, but we can see where this could be going. And you got vouchers, and pretty soon we're just privatizing education. But his point, he's a strong advocate of vouchers and charter schools and all kinds of schools to give, essentially, education consumers choices for their children. And, that will improve all of the schools. I've got a 26-year-old kid who had a really good experience in a charter school when he was in middle school. So that's been over 10 years ago now. Schools across the board in the state of Michigan are failing to adequately educate our students. We're one of the worst states in the nation. I grew up in Ohio. Michigan, man, that was cool. University of Michigan, jobs, highways, beautiful, everything up north. We're turning into Mississippi. So I think this whole thing we've had, where we've got competition for our public schools, it's going to make all the schools better. I don't see that working. And in the long run, it could easily get worse.
Mary, do you need the question repeated, or?
Yeah, could you repeat the question for me? I was volunteering.
What's your position on the proliferation of charter schools?
All right, proliferation means that there's a lot of them, and they're becoming unchecked or something like that. Is that what you mean, or just?
We're increasing the numbers.
They're increasing.
Just in general, your stance on charter schools.
Okay, I believe that parents know what's best for their kids. All they want is their kids to learn. And I'm a big believer in school choice. And if there's a charter school that is doing better than the public school, then the parents should be able to send that child to a charter school. Some have been working very well in Detroit. They work very well in inner cities for low-income families. Now, instead of a voucher, if a low-income child wants to go to a private school or whatever, there is something that's called a scholarship tax credit. And what it is, it's a corporation and private individuals who set up a charity fund. And that money goes to parents for whatever, private tutoring, online schools, however they choose. It's different from a voucher because vouchers are tax money, public money. The tax credit, the scholarship tax credit, is voluntary and it's private. And 14 states have it, and it's worked really well, and it's passed constitutional muster. So that would be what I would propose too for parents who want to choose a private school.
Topic.
This one goes to Mary.
Okay.
We saw school choice having an unintended consequence where wealthy individuals can have the money to take their kids out of a local school district and bring them to another school district, such as Zeeland from West Ottawa and Holland. What's your opinion on school choice and the segregation, economic segregation that is causing in our schools?
Well, unfortunately, yeah, it is yes, it is a consequence. But there are people, the kids in Detroit, or they can also, we have the Schools of Choice program where they can go to another district. And unfortunately, there's a transportation problem, but my faith in the private sector, come on, Uber for schools, take these kids to school. But yeah, it has kind of turned out that way, where you have a large segment of African Americans who are sort of stuck in one area. But I wouldn't want to go into, are you asking like forced desegregation again or something, or But that's the way, that's the way it happened. That the wealthier people left the city and went to the suburbs. But just because you're low income and you're in a low income school doesn't mean you can't achieve. That's why I like the schools of choice.
Tim, would you like the question restated, or are you okay?
No, I'm okay. That's a tough one, Don. There's so much to it. And I mean, we could easily go on for a half hour on that and still do more. But there's always unintended consequences in things. And this is a prime example where it sounds great. Gee, if there's a school and maybe they got a really good theater program and your kid's into acting, send them there. But then we get into unintended consequences. The three school systems that are primarily in this district, the three public systems, Spring Lake, Grand Haven, and West Ottawa, I've met with them. I met with Andy Ingall, the superintendent at Grand Haven. They're doing well. And, we think Detroit's a long ways off. But then right here, we look at Holland City Schools. And oh my gosh, I moved here 35 years ago. And, the change that's happened in a generation. And there's things I look at, and our Republican opponent, groups that have endorsed him. And these are groups that have no problem at all with Holland Public Schools failing and would be glad to jump in and replace that with charters. And increasingly, 3/4 of those charter schools now are run for profit. And the profit from those goes into contributing to our Republican opponent's campaign. And this is a really, really big problem that sounds great at first, but then the ramifications from that long term, horrible.
To ask a question. Our legislature has been using appropriations to override direct votes of the citizens. For example, expansion of the emergency financial manager law and straight ticket voting. Can you talk about budgetary process and the constitutional language around budgetary process and whether or not you support their using appropriations in this way, or if you would work to eliminate the legislature's ability to do that?
This is Tim's.
Could we run through that one again?
The legislature has been adding appropriations to bills that were when we've had referendums.
Yes, please use it. This has been a test.
We voted, the people of Michigan had a referendum to not expand the emergency financial manager law. The legislature then expanded the emergency financial manager law, overriding the direct vote of the people of Michigan by putting an appropriation on that bill. If a bill has an appropriation, it is referendum proof. However, that does not reflect constitutional language. What is your position on using budgetary processes to push through legislation?
Yeah, okay, so I spoke to that very issue earlier this evening as far as gerrymandering of districts goes, because that had an appropriation on that also, which made that referendum proof. So no, this is just anti-democratic. This is a group of, and it's not just our legislators because they're term limited out. This is beyond that. This is, and largely, it's a limited number of families in this state that want to control things in this state, education and other things. So, this establishes a permanent group of people through the gerrymandering and the appropriation going on that. Emergency management, where, there's not the local democracy that should exist in a city or a local school board, but imposes state control over all kinds of things. But worse than that, a permanent power that rests not with the people of the state of Michigan, and certainly not with our local voters.
Mary?
As a libertarian, I find that practice infuriating. You go through the process of trying to put a citizens initiative or a ballot initiative together, and boom, they pass something and put an appropriations on it so you can't do it anymore. No, that's not right. I don't. I would try to introduce legislation that would stop that, because we voted that we didn't want this emergency law, and then they turn around and do it. Like I said, it infuriates me. I don't like to talk up my former state, but it doesn't happen in Virginia. That's it, sorry.
Okay.
If elected to represent the 89th district, what would you do to remain in touch with the voters and those voters' wishes once elected?
All right, this goes to Mary.
Okay. To stay in touch, there's a lot of ways to stay in touch. You can have office hours, and I would try to have my office hours too, like for people who work, so they in the evenings, so they don't have to miss work, or if they have childcare issues or things like that. Also, there's also social media. I would keep in touch People can send me emails, you can tweet. I don't know if that makes a person a twit, but I tweet and Facebook. No, I would definitely reach out to people.
Tim?
Well, one thing, in full disclosure, Aaron, who asked that question, is part of our campaign. And he's part of the answer because we have reached out already in our campaign to a lot of local people and groups. We had the opportunity last week to go to West Ottawa High School and meet with Aaron's group. And we're hoping to involve some of those people in a campaign canvas that we've got going on this Saturday here. So local involvement, very, very necessary. And Mary's absolutely right. You can't have a coffee at 10 o'clock on a Friday morning when it's convenient for the legislator. People are working. We had a campaign event early on in this campaign at Old Boys Brew House in Spring Lake. And we invited people and promoted it, and we had 12 people show up. And that was great. And we listened and we discussed, and that's a healthy thing for our democracy. And then the other thing I've got, this came up at an event in Grand Haven, where the leader of the Chamber of Commerce in Grand Haven said that we've always been very fortunate here in West Michigan to have a really good legislator. And I said, well, yeah, that's because you're the Chamber of Commerce, and they always show up for Chamber of Commerce events. Chamber of Commerce schedules their events on Friday and Monday when they're not in Lansing. I want to get to all the people. I've been to housing groups, I've been to community mental health groups. There was a community mental health forum last week, which our Republican opponent didn't attend also.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. This one will be for Tim, once again. Since Michigan ranks 48th in the ratio of students to school nurses, and the exact amount is 4,204 students to one nurse, what plans do you propose to correct this shortage, especially with more and more students coming to school with medical needs?
Can't Mary go first?
Sorry.
No, I read a story, there's Bridge Magazine, that excellent online publication that you could all look up and Google and subscribe to. And that was covered in there just within the last week. There are a lot of things where, like Andy Engall, the Grand Haven school superintendent, told me, if they're missing 10 students on count day, which was October 5th, that's $75,000. And that's a teaching position now. And that's how tight things are. It's right at class size. There's not the assistant to somebody in the services of whatever position to eliminate anymore. And nurses would go right to that also. At legislator, I'm not going to be here at a candidate forum and say, oh, we should have nurses in schools and it's important. And I'll enact legislation to include a nurse at every school, because it's not likely to happen. The first thing we've got to do is stop the bleeding way back where we're not going to the next 2 or 3 kids in every class size. We've got to stop silly legislation like the 4th grade reading thing. So yeah, it'd be great to have a nurse in a school, and that's something that ought to exist in this state. I bet in Minnesota they've got them, and that's a whole different economic model from their legislature.
So there's one nurse for, how many?
4,204 students.
And why is there, I'm just trying to think of why is there a shortage of nurses? I mean,
Is the person who wrote this question in the room? No. Yeah.
okay. Because I know, schools are supposed to have.
Ellen, can you add to this
As
question?
a former teacher, I can say as budget cuts came up, they had to do away with jobs, with positions, and school nurses and librarians, people like that, or aides, were some of the people that they cut.
Okay, so
The
it's
medications to students, some of them have to take medications every day. in the school system I worked in, which is near here, the secretaries in the office were in charge of that.
Okay, now I get it. All right, I didn't know that, it was funding and it wasn't just a shortage of, nurses or anything like that. Maybe what could work out is more of a rotation, where you have both registered and licensed practical nurses that come in for a period of time and then can rotate out. But like you said, it is a question of funding. Unfortunately, the best thing I could think of, like I said, is to maybe work more with like a licensed practical nurse, a registered nurse on a rotating basis to get those people in. Maybe there is like a community hospital charity that would be able to come in and do this instead of, you wouldn't have to pay the person, that they would just be doing it as a volunteer. I don't know if this is really answering your question, but.
Okay, the next question. Voter access in the democratic process is a hallmark position of the League of Women Voters. How would you propose expanding voter access? So, Mary?
Expanding voter access. Along with the Libertarian Party, we've been down to several areas on voter registration drives to get people to register to vote. In Virginia, in the Libertarians, we formed transportation groups to get people to the polls that couldn't get there. Also, too, I think we need to look at, as far as absentee voting goes, maybe no reason absentee voting, so people can vote.
Tim?
I would be for everything possible to increase the number of people in this democracy to vote. The more people that vote, the more important it is. The more important it is, the more people pay attention to the issues. The more people pay attention to the issues, the better our legislators are at doing their jobs, the better our results are. So everything, whether it's like my brother in Pittsburgh who registered to vote on election day at the polling site, I noticed in Ohio 4 years ago, there was a place you could go for weeks before the election to go and vote early. Open absentee would be a similar thing here. All those things should be wide open in a healthy democracy. I want to take, because I got more time, I want to get back to the last question on nursing, even though my mic might get shut down. In Sunday school class, in my adult class, and I don't remember how this came up, but there was a elementary school principal there. And the past week, there had been a student with head lice. And as principal of that school, she'd been picking through that student's head, getting lice out of there so that that kid could stay in school that day and not have to go home. There's where we don't have nurses, but that to me was, oh my gosh, the dedication that we just all the schools and they're overpaid and oh my gosh, story like that. So just thanks for the opportunity to share that.
Hey, Mary, would you like to circle back to that question at all?
No, I think I'm over the headlines.
You don't want to relive it?
I'll be looking at that tonight.
Okay, sir?
I have a big concern about the environment we're going to pass on to future generations, including 100 or 1,000 years from now. Exxon scientists in 1970 said that burning fossil fuels is going to cause some climate change and problems because they no longer work for Exxon now. And we're fracking for oil and using dangerous chemicals in the process and pumping it into the ground. Please address the future environment. Our butterflies, monarchs are dying. Please address the future environment for our generations to come from us.
Tim?
Yeah, there are things growing up. Like I remember my excellent high school biology teacher showing that the curve of population growth in a bacteria culture and how it starts up and then it grows exponentially, then it starts to slow down, and then it goes into collapse. And she said, okay, we're at that place on the planet right now where I paid attention to that. And there are a lot of things, back in the 70s growing up, you thought by now we would be, there's other things we couldn't have possibly conceived of that we are doing. But I would have thought that we would have been ahead of where we are environmentally by now. And there are other things that we set into motion. So when the city of Holland builds a gas plant, gas comes from fracking. Gas is really, really plentiful right now because there's a whole lot of fracking going on. So, there's a decision that gets made in the long term based on something that's happening now. And then what that does, that carves into stone, well, we have to frack because we need all this gas because we've got a gas plant that's dependent on that. We just made a huge investment. So we really have to be careful of long-term decisions that get made. It's not as easy as just saying we should stop fracking. There's other things that make it's carved into the system.
Thank you. Mary?
Technology, science is always changing. There are things now that we didn't even dream of 30 years ago. It moves fast. Elon Musk, who is getting ready to go to Mars, is also building a huge battery that will store solar and wind energy. By the time he gets done with that, we'll probably be on to the next thing. It'll already be obsolete. But right now, Michigan is not exactly a great candidate for wind. Wind blows in the spring, it blows in the fall. Don't really need a whole lot of air conditioning or heat at those times. So when the wind doesn't blow, then natural gas is going to have to kick in. So wind energy is part natural gas. They're working on solar, but I think they can work, together. But like I said, things are changing. And, what I remember when I was a kid growing up in Great Haven, we had the tannery. Now that is closed, and now the channel, the waterway is a lot cleaner. Like I said, air is cleaner, our water is cleaner. Like I said, technology is always moving. So stand back. Oh, how much time do I have? 7 seconds. Oh.
4 now.
Thank you. This is an emergency manager question, and I'm going to tweak it a little bit. At the time of the Flint crisis, the governor appointed a commission, and they made, to evaluate what occurred. And that commission, one of the primary things that they found was that that some of this occurred due to the flaws in the emergency manager law. So whatever those flaws are, how would you tweak that bill if we were, if we still have to keep it? What changes would you make to avoid a problem like that happened in Flint?
It's me, right?
Sorry. So it would be yes, it would be Mary.
Oh, okay. You mean as far as the Flint water crisis goes with the emergency manager?
Yes.
I think we have to really look at, I've never really liked the emergency manager idea that much. But, to use a Navy jargon, the ship is going towards the rocks and you need somebody new in the pilot house right now. So, but I think the emergency manager, as far as their mission has to be more precise. I mean, when you send somebody down there, are you doing it to rescue the city? To get the city back? For the city? Or are you doing it for the state? And I think that gets lost in there. Emergency managers, they're bean counters. They're not experts in a whole lot of stuff. And sometimes you just have to go with your expertise at the city level and And I know he tried, he said he reached out to the DEQ, I don't know about that. But, and then also too, that there has to be more transparency too, as far as how he's doing his work. And be more accountable to the people in the city. Not that they should sue him every other day, but just to be more accountable.
Tim, do you have any ideas on how to
Yeah,
make
it's
changes?
great. Mary should keep going first. This is a lot better for me.
Did I do it again?
Mary was just talking about, are they doing it for the local unit of government? Are they doing it for the state? It can be worse than that. And she would have gotten to this if I had gone first. But, like in Benton Harbor, where it's like, could be doing it for the private developer that's taking over the city park. So there's corruption inherent in that and decisions that can be made. Yeah, this would be great to get a city manager in there because then we can do this. And then the other thing is, I would be in favor of just eliminating the whole city, the whole emergency man. Did I say city manager instead of emergency manager?
No, he said city.
No one is correcting me? Come on. Just say, hey, do you mean emergency manager? Yeah, I meant emergency manager. So, I would contend that, as far as Flint, Detroit schools, we'd be better off without an emergency manager at all. So I think that should be the starting point, is there is no emergency manager. And then if we want to start one from that point, fine. But you could eliminate it first. I had one more thing on this. I might come back to it in the next thing if I remember. All right.
What do you view as the state's greatest problem, and how would you go about solving it?
I'm up.
Yeah, you're up.
I'll go with this. The state's biggest problem is we've got a government in Lansing that is not responsive to the people of this state. We have legislators in Lansing that do not represent our district. If our opponent, who is not here tonight, is our next representative, and it wasn't just that he's not here tonight, he was not at the Community Mental Health Forum in Grand Haven last week. He chose to skip the Holland League's forum
I
last.
think we'll just sort of move away from that part. But
Why?
We don't, because we don't want a personal attack. So
This isn't a personal attack.
Well,
My point here is, I want to represent all the people of this district, and that's an important thing. My point is, when we elect a legislator who represents PACs, big money groups, one family donating $9,000, 9 family members from this family, we know who we're talking about, all on the same day in July, $1,000 checks to this candidate. That's not a personal attack, that's public record. That is where government breaks down. He will not be representing the people of this district as I would. He's representing those people that have him buy the money. There's no personal attack there. That's our biggest problem, I think, in state government.
I just want to take advantage of my position as a moderator, but I think when someone's not here to defend themselves too, that it's best that we not call out people and things like that. So
I'm going to disagree with that. I think he's got the opportunity to be here just as I have the opportunity to be here tonight.
Mary, would you like him to restate the question?
Was it our number one problem?
Yeah,
Okay.
state's greatest problem, how would you fix it?
Okay. Well, right now, Michigan, and this is came up when I was running for governor. And our economy, it's slowly going. It's kind of up and then it's down. But anyway, this was my number one problem from the voters that I met all over the state. And this problem was number one with a bullet. End corporate welfare. Who in the world, and this has been going on for like years, and I don't understand how this can exist. We have a group of bureaucrats in Lansing called the Michigan Economic Development Corporation who take taxpayers' money and dole it out to favorites. That's not how you build an economy. What makes them think that they know better than people. Investment people, banks, insurers, as far as how to grow an economy. The only thing they develop are politicians, because they get to come back to their district and say how many jobs, real or imagined, that they've actually created. So maybe we should change the name to the Michigan Political Development Corporation. That'll kill it. But it should go. That money needs to be returned to the private sector. Consumers grow an economy, not bureaucrats.
Thank you. I think at this time now, we'll go ahead and we'll take our 2-minute statements. And so, given that Mary had the first opportunity before, we'll give you the first try now for your 2-minute closing statement.
Okay. I did think of the other thing on that emergency manager law that I don't like, and that is, who are the pool of candidates that are lined up for that position? How do they get interviewed? At what point in life is somebody like, hey, I want to go to that town and I want to be the emergency manager in charge of that mess for 18 months? Who is that person? And then when you come out of that, what does that do to your resume? You just did what? So I don't know that we're hiring a more skilled bunch of people by doing that than if we just left it to local control, no matter how bad we think they're doing on a local level. That's still a democratic process, at least. So what I've done here in Ottawa County, years ago, owning 2 bike shops, routes needed to be planned for cycling. I worked on a committee. The county determined we're going to do wide shoulders on these roads, and this includes Lakeshore Drive out here. The county approved all that. They hired a consultant. It's all cool. Road Commission won't do it. Found out how government works or doesn't work. I got with my county commissioner. We went to Grand Haven Township that started up north. Found out who we needed to see, in what order, who to meet, how many people we needed to get to a meeting to speak politely to the cause. And slowly we built up a consensus. The Road Commission started to see our point of view. We got a bunch of people to that meeting. We made this work. And now it happened again 2 years ago in Port Sheldon Township. 5 new members on Road Commission. I met Phil Kyers. It was Denny Swartout before. We worked together. We used private contributions. We got that done. I'm a Democrat. I can work with local elected Republican officials to actually get something accomplished. And I want to take that ability to Lansing to make Lansing work for all of us.
Thank you. Mary, your time.
I don't have a lot of money. I don't have a lot of endorsements. The Libertarian Party endorses me. My mom endorses me. Erwin endorses me. What I'm really trying to do is to let you know that, there is a choice. And if Jim Lilly is elected, which he probably is, I want you to start, when he comes and talks to you and stuff like that, I want you to ask him and start thinking, what about liberty, Jim? What about small government and low taxes and reducing our burden, Jim? Because if I can get that across, and if we can make Jim a better legislator, because, first of all, if I win, you better check the Weather Channel because hell just froze over. But if I can get this across to you, and if it does make Jim a better legislator, then I'll consider that a victory. Thank you.
Thank you very much.